Alright, so starting with this chapter, I'm going to attempt to post videos for all of our lessons, just in case you missed something in the lesson or you were absent that day. I want to apologize first of all for the quality of the audio. It might sound like I'm clicking back and forth on the mouse or spinning the wheel, but the microphone is just very old and I can't be bothered to buy a new one. So on Friday we started 3.1, so it was basically about scatter plots, and my content objective was I will examine different variable types. So the whole goal of that lesson was to talk about 4 different variable classifications and then how they interact with scatter plots. The warm-up for that day was basically me asking you guys to write everything that you remember about scatter plots. So it doesn't have to be complete sentences, just write down everything you remember. So jumping into the lesson, the first 2 variables I want to talk about were categorical variables and quantitative variables. So a categorical variable places an individual into one of several groups or categories. So the keywords there being, groups or categories. Anything that's synonymous with those words basically is a huge indicator that you're working with a categorical variable. Now, a quantitative variable takes numerical values for which arithmetic operations such as adding and averaging make sense. So basically this one has more to do with just pure math. You're not going to have groups in this. You're not going to have categories. It's basically just focusing on the numbers. So the first example we did in class was about medical study variables. So the prompt reads, data from a medical study contain values of many variables for each of the people who were subjects to the study. Which of the following variables are categorical and which are quantitative? So basically, the task was to look through all 6 of these and determine if they fall into categories or if they're more quantitative. So again, the keywords are like, hey, is this a group? If it's a group, it's a category, so it's categorical. If it's quantitative, which basically means there's some kind of numerical value to go with it, or, for example, some kind of measurement, then it's quantitative. So we did these as a class. If you guys weren't here, I had the class, kind of talk about, which ones they thought were the appropriate answers here. But to go over them, basically, gender, male or female, those are 2 different groups or categories. It's categorical. Now, age was a bit of a discussion. Age can be both. Age can be a category because you could potentially create groups based off of age. So that could be categorical, but age is also a number, so it can also be quantitative. It really depends on the context of the problem itself. Now, C was pretty straightforward. You got, again, groups, categories, you got categorical. Yes or no answer, 2 groups, categorical. There's no numerical value here. Now, the last 2 had to do with some kind of measurement. So that measurement was a huge indicator that we're talking about quantity, so it was quantitative. And then we had 2 more variable types that I wanted to discuss. And the first is a response variable, which measures an outcome of a study. The other one is an explanatory variable, which attempts to explain the observed outcomes. Now, one of the questions that I asked in class is basically, which one of these do you think represents X, and which one do you think represents Y? So you might want to take a moment, pause the video, and make a guess for yourself. Which one do you believe has to do with X, and which one has to do with Y? Now, I'm hoping you actually paused the video and tried it out. So in class, I got 50-50. Half the class said this one was X, half the class said it was Y, and the same thing for this one here. Now, the correct answer is an explanatory variable is more commonly associated with X. This typically attempts to explain this one. This is an outcome. So if you think of, for example, like algebra, the stuff that you guys did in there, you had functions. Basically, Y was the output. It was the outcome. So that's why we have these 2 here. Typically, when you have X, a value for that, if you plug that in, that explains how you get Y, because basically after you plug in X, you find Y. The same logic, holds here. Now, we had a problem that involved explanatory and response variables. So it had to do with the effects of alcohol on the body temperature. So basically, the prompt here says, alcohol has many effects on the body. One effect is a drop in body temperature. To study this effect, researchers gave several different amounts of alcohol to mice, then measured the change in each mouse's body temperature in 15 minutes after taking the alcohol. So the question here was, what does this information sound like? Is it categorical? Is it quantitative? Is it exploratory or explanatory? Or is it a response variable, So I basically told the class I want you to focus on these two. So I basically hinted that there were both of these in this prompt here. And I also said that it's possibly one of these as well. And this was a bit of debate in class, which was, I think, great. But if you look at the prompt, there's several different things going on here. But most importantly, what are they researching? So what are they studying here? So it's talking about the effects of alcohol, right? So we have the effects of alcohol, and they're measuring that. So they're measuring this. Measurement typically is a huge indicator that we're talking about quantitative. Now, here's where the point of discussion came in class. It says, to study this effect, researchers give several different amounts of alcohol to mice. Now, this different amounts, that part kind of prompted people to think, oh, it's probably categorical. So now we have different groups, different amounts. Well, the issue with that is they did not explicitly state how much alcohol they gave to the different mice, and that wasn't really huge as part of the study. So unfortunately, it actually was quantitative and not categorical. So yeah, yes, we have different amounts of alcohol, but those weren't explicitly stated as, hey, we gave this group this amount, we gave this group this amount. So it wasn't categorical. There weren't groups. It was just one group of mice that were given different amounts of alcohol. Now, this measurement part, the fact that they measured the change in the body temperature, that's quantitative. And as far as the answer goes as to which one is explanatory and which one is the response variable, here's the answer. So the amount of alcohol is the explanatory variable, and the change in the body temperature is the response variable. Now, like I said before, these two, the explanatory and the response variables, are interrelated. So explanatory is supposed to try to explain what's going on in the response variable. So this indicates basically that the alcohol is trying to explain why there was a change in the body temperature. So if you can link those two together, what causes the other, that's how you determine if it's explanatory or response. And then that was basically it for the lesson. I'm trying to break these down into small lessons so that things don't get overwhelming, so you're not thrown with a ton of different things in the same day. But that's it. And the homework assignment for that particular lesson was assignment number 9, pages 122 to 123, and you were to do these problems here. None of the problems really had a lot of context, so it doesn't necessarily have to have full-on complete sentences like an AP exam would have. You can just think of these as just pure math. You're trying to figure out which is which. But that's about it.